Hello, everyone. Thomas Weimbs here again, the founder and president of Santa Barbara Nutrients. I'm at the PKD Research Conference here in Lisbon in Portugal. Wonderful place, and there have been a lot of fantastic talks by all these many colleagues I haven't seen, for over the COVID pandemic. So it's great to be back in person and meeting everyone again. I've had the chance to discuss some topics with some of the colleagues here, including with Dr. Pei, who I've known for a long time. And Jörg is a professor of medicine at the University of Toronto in the division of nephrology. He is a long-standing researcher, clinical and preclinical work in polycystic kidney disease, has done a lot of work on many different topics, a lot of genetic work and so on. And he's also the director of the Center for Innovative Management of Polycystic Kidney Disease in Toronto. And we discussed the clinical trial we're actually planning together that will be done in Toronto, led by Dr. Pei. And it's a clinical trial on dietary interventions in polycystic kidney disease, in particular using the RENEW program that teaches a plant-focused ketogenic diet with avoidance of renal stressors for polycystic kidney disease. So we discussed everything about this trial, and hopefully some of you might find it interesting. So maybe to start off, COVID is just behind us, hopefully. And, lots of people have been stuck at home for a long time. And, things might have changed with their, levels of exercise and mobility and all the eating they're doing. What have you seen, like in your, in your clinic, when people walk in? Do they have they gained weight? Have things changed during the COVID pandemic?
So hi everybody, and I hope you're all well. And hello, Thomas. It's nice to see you. And this is my second face-to-face meeting since the pandemic has kind of under better control recently. And so it really has been a great pleasure to meet you and all the other PKD scientists in this conference. And so I think that we are in a kind of a recovery phase of the pandemic, which has been extremely challenging over the past 3 years. I have been continue to see patients even during the pandemic, but there is no doubt that the pandemic had negatively impacted on many patients with polycystic kidney disease or any other diseases other than COVID, because of the straining of the medical healthcare system by COVID itself. Many diseases or patients with non-COVID related problem had been kind of put in a kind of a background kind of a mode of care, and for my clinic, we have been doing virtual care pretty well, even up till now. Hopefully, when things are getting better, we are in the 7th wave right now. Cases are still going up in Toronto, although the ICU bed utilization has not been going up. So it means that there are lots of infection, but not many people have severe disease. Yeah. So my impression, talking to my patient, is that a large percentage of PKD patients have gained weight. I think that this is a very common theme. My kind of estimate would be at least 2/3 of the patient that I talk to like gain 5 to 20 pounds and average 8 to 10 pounds. And I think it's very natural when we are stressed, we tend to lean on comfort lifestyle of food, which may not be the most healthy. And so metabolic health has taken a toll since COVID. And personally, I have to say I am guilty of that as well. So I think I probably gained at least 10 pounds. And even though I've been usually very careful with my diet. And so I think with this as a background and that we are in a recovery phase, it's also a good time to start to have a conversation about how we can improve our metabolic health. And as you know, we are organizing a conference in October, and you are one of the guest speakers to talk to us about metabolic health and your ketogenic diet program. And I also want to emphasize another aspect is mental health as well. So both mental health and metabolic health, we have suffered greatly. And I think it's a good time to start a conversation about building resilience in our mental and physical health, how to do that. I think the preclinical work on the ketogenic diet, intermittent fasting, has a lot of scientific foundation, and the results are very interesting. But we also want to caution that translation to human sometimes is not so straightforward. And sometimes what works in an animal model may not work completely as well in human. And so I think that it is important to really have some control, like evidence-based type of results to guide us how to counsel patients. So I think I would envisage this is an evolving kind of theme that we will have a lot of conversation and learning more about metabolic health, how to improve it with dietary maneuver, and based on ongoing clinical and translational research.
I totally agree. Of course, we have to document things and look at outcomes and so on. And that's exactly, of course, what we're actually doing together. So we're maybe for the audience that may not have heard this yet, York is actually going to run a clinical trial up in Toronto on people with polycystic kidney disease. Implementing the sort of the dietary program that incorporates a plant-focused ketogenic diet with lots of other changes and so on. And I'm wondering what you can tell us about the upcoming trial, the planning, how far things have come, and when we think the trial might start, and how long it will take, and so on.
Again, the story about this trial is also very interesting because it started with a conversation after you were a guest speaker to our PKD patient support program to talk about your preclinical work and the ketogenic diet to slow PKD in the different animal models. It was very well received, and there was a lot of interest. And personally, I have the opportunity to look after several patients that are either on intermittent fasting, time-restricted feeding, or on various variation of the ketogenic diet, and with mixed results. Some have really excellent results, some are not so good results from the perspective of the lipid profile. And so I think from this conversation and from learning that you have created this program with dietary experts. It really stimulated my interest, and both personally and also for the kind of perspective of helping our patients. We thought that it would be good to have a more formal kind of essentially a phase 1 clinical trial, which is to address mostly safety, tolerability, and we thought that we can actually measure changes in metabolic health. So the essential feature of this trial is that it will be a prospective study, and we will have a control group of patients, and the control group of patients will be matched to the patient undergoing the ketogenic educational program in terms of their PKD disease severity using the Mayo Clinic imaging class. And this would be a 1-year study in which we will carefully document and measure safety profile and relevant metabolic profile that are relevant to the dietary intervention in both groups. And we will also do MRI to measure the kidney cystic burden at the beginning and the end of the study. I think the intention really is to address safety and tolerability. I don't think we will be able to address whether the diet will be able to change PKD severity because of the patient sample size. Each group will have 40 patients, so it's a total of 80 patients. So I'm very excited. During COVID, it is very hard to do clinical research. And so we, however, were able to manage to really get a protocol, and we'll be shortly putting it through the REB for approval. So we hope that realistically we may be able to start maybe in January of 2023, and then to generate some high quality information that we can learn and share with the community in a year's time.
So the patients would come from the Toronto area, patients that are in your clinic or kind of nearby. But patients don't have to come to your clinic all day long. So there's a lot of a remote aspect to the whole trial, especially the whole training phase, the dietary training phase, which uses the existing Renew program, which is a remote program. Maybe I would potentially argue that COVID actually, the whole pandemic kind of helped people getting used to remote learning and doing things remotely. What's your take on this? Do you think this has maybe a long-lasting impact in how clinical trials will be conducted going forward, that not as much has to be in person anymore?
I think the unique feature is the remote aspect of the educational component of the ketogenic diet program. I think it's a 12-week educational program in which patient will be guided by dietitian remotely, like through regular scheduled kind of virtual visit, which I think is very unique, and we all can benefit, especially when you have a busy lifestyle that you don't really have to physically travel and spend the time. So I think I hope that this would help to facilitate the implementation. I think that there are requirements for monitoring, because we need to check the blood and urine for certain key metabolites or for safety parameters, and blood sugar, lipid profile, for example, electrolyte abnormality. And so I think this would be very valuable information that is in a very vigorously controlled scientific environment that can generate high quality information to guide and potentially identify benefits or even risks and how to mitigate it, how to improve the program, and what are the challenges, and so I think it will generate a lot of very interesting information or maybe new question for future research as well.
It's a dietary intervention trial, right? So it's not a drug trial. There's no placebo arm and so on. And I wonder, based on your experience, interacting with PKD patients as a nephrologist all day long, how high do you think the level of interest is in the PKD community about dietary changes, dietary interventions that might help the disease progression? And it's difficult to change diets and lifestyle habits. That's always the downside to it. But my sense is, and I wonder what your take is, my sense is that a lot of individuals with PKD are really, really interested in dietary changes. And I would assume there won't be much problem recruiting for this trial, but I wonder what you think.
Personally, I know that this is an area that has received a lot of attention and interest. And so I in my own kind of clinic, I already had a lot of patients that had expressed interest. And what I have counsel them is not to try to do it on their own, because we are really in a learning phase as it is being implemented in a kind of a clinical setting, and that's why research plays a big role in the initial part, because there are a lot of different versions of like ketogenic diet, and we may learn that some may be very helpful and some may not be very helpful, and so I suspect that we will have the required patient relatively easily, because based on my conversation with patients that I look after already, there is a substantial interest, and I think that we have been very fortunate to have the PKD Center that look after a large cohort of patients. We are currently following probably around 500 patients. So to have 40 patients interested to take part in a dietary intervention, I suspect this would be very reasonable, like in terms of the recruitment. And then we'll be able to match them using existing research database on these patients, patients with similar severity as their control, but who will be on a standard North American diet, so that we can really critically evaluate the benefit of this dietary intervention program.
Yeah, I'm so glad we're doing this, so that there'll be data generated in a controlled setting. Thank you so much for working together on this trial. I'm greatly looking forward to it. So recruitment hasn't started yet. As you mentioned, there's some approval steps that have yet to be completed. So this kind of pre-announcement is more to, get the word out a little bit, start people to get thinking about, if I live in the Toronto greater area, is this something I might want to do? So start thinking if you are a Canadian, and look out for announcements. Stay tuned, I would say. As soon as a call comes out for recruiting for the trial, you'd want to probably know about it, and then we of course there are inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria, so not everybody would qualify for it. And I wonder if you could tell us real quick what the inclusion and exclusion criteria roughly are for this trial.
Because this is really quite new, we want to build in inclusion exclusion criteria is to for safety parameter. We want to be sure that we don't hurt any patients, and so there are specific criteria. For example, people with uncontrolled diabetic, kind of very high blood sugar that is not well controlled, or uncontrolled lipid profile. I think they have to have the parameters under better control before they would be considered eligible. It's just for safety reason. Other consideration include, for example, patients who are on tolvaptan, because it may at this stage be complicated to manage both tolvaptan, the water intake, and the diet. We feel that we will take little steps and start with the patient who are not on tolvaptan, and people with uncontrolled high blood pressure, for example, may not be safe to start this program. So we want to be very conservative, and the idea is that we want to make sure the patient who enrolled in this program will not be harmed first before we do any good. And but at the same time, for those who are participating, we will be able to monitor very closely for any kind of very even slight harm, that to make sure that they will not be hurt by maybe any kind of inadvertent events, and should something happen, we will be able to identify and intervene early. That's why I think this is important, and it will help us to generate new information about safety and tolerability, which is the major focus. And I think for those of you who are interested to learn more, hopefully we will be able to provide an update. And I kind of also want to let you know that in October, we will have a PKD conference in Toronto. It will be a hybrid conference of 2 half days. And the first day, we will have a number of international experts to review the state of art about advances in PKD care. And the second day, we will have a symposium in which Thomas will be one of the panelists. And the theme of the symposium this year is on the recovery from a pandemic, like building a kind of a resilience in physical and metabolic health. So we'll have a couple of mental health experts and also a couple of dietary experts to really talk to us about different aspects of mental and metabolic health and strategy to improve in both. And so we will be able to advertise the link to this conference. And it's there is a virtual component, and it's free, so you just need to sign up. So we will make sure that we send this information out once we have the program finalized.
Absolutely, stay tuned. I'm greatly looking forward to coming to Toronto in October. Also in this space here, we'll announce the upcoming event. Is the event open only to Canadians, or because there's a remote component to it, is this open to anyone in the world?
This conference is open to anyone who is interested around the world, as long as you're willing to adjust to the time zone. And then the other thing is it will be recorded. So even if you cannot make it, it will be posted later. I think that we plan to post it in this web link called Kidney U, which is for mostly physician, but I think a patient can potentially access. The other site that we can post would be the website of the PKD Foundation of Canada.
Thank you so much, Jörg. So it was a great pleasure to hear your take on all this. I'm looking forward, to the rest of the conference, learning about the latest and greatest of research from quite an interesting community here. Great, and we'll see each other very soon in Toronto. Thank you very much.